First of all, if we start off on our feeder drum, this is a flex front, so you don't have any really options with the drum that we've got on the flex. Do you make a drum to go onto the flex? We do. Righto, so we can change it on the flex, but on the 635, 640s, you've got a 16-inch drum, and when you get into really tough crops, like bulky crops, the gap between the floor and the drum is not really that much. It's about that much, about 6 inches. So then you can get a 14-inch drum, which gives you an inch more gap between the floor and the drum, so that makes feeding a little bit better. Around Millicent we've harvested broad beans. Now the broad bean, when it's growing, is about 2 meters high. So the plant, you also go and spray it out, but to get that plant into the machine is really challenging. So our slip clutch on the feeder drum, on the front drum, kept on going off. So what we've done, we bought one of Pete's drums, put it in there, and our problem was solved. Right, so in lighter crops, 16-inch drum will work. A little bit heavier, 14-inch drum will work. If you're really in heavy crops, get one of Pete's drums and put it in, and that will solve your issue there. Second issue that we've seen with the John Deere's is our feed accelerator belt. So how many of you guys have smoked the belt? Is it nice to change? It's 40 degrees. Get about 3 blocks out of it and then you need to replace it. So on our feed accelerator, it sits on the right hand side, the belt that drives it. So why does our feed accelerator burn in the first place, and why does our feeder house clutch go off all the time? So if we start on the clutch, why did your clutch go off?
Mumps.
Sorry? Mumps? Yep. Tip that I used to say to the dealerships: grease the clutch on PD and then damage the grease nipple so you don't get a grease gun on it. So don't worry about that slip clutch on the feeder house. The grease can't go anywhere, so once there's grease in there, there's grease in there. So don't stress about greasing it. Why is that clutch going off? That clutch is going off because we can't get the material away from our feed accelerator into here. So that is why that clutch is going off. On these machines, you can get a tough crop feed accelerator. On all the other machines, you can go out and buy all the parts to go onto the feed accelerator through spare parts. So if you poke your head in there at the bottom, you'll see there's 3 of those feed accelerator plates per run. I think there's 8 runs, so 3 per run. The tough crop feed accelerator comes 6 per run, so that makes it heaps more aggressive. If you're looking for speed on your machine and you can't feed it in, put that tough crop feed accelerator in there, and you wouldn't know your machine.
So you say that, but why are the 740s twice as good as the 640?
740 is twice as good as the
740 draper front.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Well, in steady conditions there wasn't much difference, but once it got a bit dry, and probably dry, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, dry and damp.
They're not much in them, but they just...
Between the 740 and 640 there was a whole heap of changes that they made.
One of them is top cross auger, one which makes a difference.
So bigger top cross auger?
Yep, the bigger, the slip clutch.
Yep.
And the hydro motor one.
So the slip clutch here is stronger, all your motors are bigger so you get more torque on them.
Yep.
And they've also changed the angle of the 740 back from the 600 series. So your angle, facing your angle is different as well.
But so you're saying this feed accelerator, but there was a massive difference just in those fronts. So.
Yeah. If your crops here are good enough, if your feed accelerator are dealing with it as it is, that's fine. I'm just saying there is a solution for it if you do get into a thicker crop and you're burning belts every 5 seconds.
Yep.
Yeah. These things help as well. Your active concave. Have you got an active concave on yours?
No.
So that.
One does, one doesn't.
I want a new one.
So at the dealership we sold the active concave, the first S600 series we sold it with an active concave by mistake. And then John Deere came back in saying, oh, it's not really necessary for your machines. We sold it by mistake, and then from then on we never sold another machine without an active concave. It's really good for those lumpy canola that's going in. Your hydraulics, the hydraulic lines acts like an accumulator. So when you do get that clump of canola in there, just for that split second, the concaves will open up and shut down again. So it's really good if you get into clumpy canola. Quieter in the cab, and if you go onto YouTube, there's videos between this concave and just your normal adjusting concave. There's videos there how much they bounce when you're harvesting. So you can't really believe how much they are bouncing just in normal harvesting conditions. Coming into our rotor, this is obviously a tri-stream rotor, so the tri-stream, it goes into 3 streams. And then on the case machines we've got 2 elephant ears, where we've got 3 on this one, and that's just for more even feeding that you're bringing it in. Right? So we get to our concaves. Now, first of all I want to say that everyone, it doesn't matter what concave you use, you're doing a good enough job with the concaves. There's always discussions at schools like this, what concave do I need? And then I would say 31, 31, 31, like all 3 small wires. And then people will jump on me and say, nah, I want a large wire at the back because I want to get more material out through it. Righto, which is fair enough, you do get more material out through it. Do you want all that material through it? Probably not, because that's what we said this morning. If we thresh all the material out of it, all the crap that we don't want, we want to keep in this rotor cage and go through to our discharge beater and then chuck it out. So first of all, I've never put these pans out and got a half threshed head at the back of it. So what we're doing in our concaves are fine, so there's no dramas there. The issue that I've got with the larger concaves, or the large wire concaves, is all the material that goes onto our top sieve. So it comes back to pumping the tyre up every day. We can't put the large wire in there, and we can get all our grain through, and we can get all our shit through onto our top sieve, but then we need to fix it with our top sieve and with our wind. So we're pumping the tyre up. So if we put a small wire concave in there, our grain will still go through it, and our grain will go through here, but we keep all our shit that we don't want on our top sieve, that stays in the rotor cage and goes out. So we don't need to deal with it. If we don't need to deal with it, the machine is happier, it works harder, we can open up our concaves more because we can go faster, because there's not all the crap that goes back through the repairs. Right? So back, if we take a step back to the loosen that I've done, we would put 31 wire concaves in there, and then we would put those 3 straps over the front of them to knock them a bit harder. So the straps I've used in the wheat as well. So we would go out, we would try harvest red wheat. So red wheat was the wheat that I've suffered the most with. I couldn't get them clean. Our sample was always full of whiteheads and we couldn't get it clean. It was doing a good enough job getting it out of the head, but to get it out of the hole, that was a bit of an issue. Right? So I discovered these plates here, which is an interrupter bar. Now don't shoot me on the price of them, it's about 270 bucks for that bar. I'm not a dealer, so I'm just telling you about it.
What happens if you buy one that's like not green?
Can you make some of them? So 31 wire concave, there was only work on a 31 wire concave, obviously 31 holes in it. So what we've done is you take your concave out, you pull all the wires out of the concave, you put these fellas in and you stick your wires back in.
How many of those do you need to put in?
I'll get to that. So you put your next one in, stick it in, next one in, stick it in. 8 the minimum. It is like these little plates here. If you put one of those plates in, you're not going to see a difference. Right? If you're going to put one of these in, you won't see a difference. I would say about 8 of them will be your minimum.
Where do you position them, from the start down?
I'll get to that.
They're keen. They're
When
keen.
you put it in, when you've got your 8 in, don't just put it on the left hand side, don't just put it on the right hand side, don't just put everything in the center here. It doesn't matter how many you put in, whether you put 5 in or 10 in or 20 in, distribute it through the whole concave from left to right. We've got a bit of an issue in our minds that you think the concave, so this bar here is exactly the same bar as that one there that sits in your concave. So this is where the action happens. So when the material comes in, it hits that bar. So that's where the action happens. That's where you interrupt the crop flow. That's where the rotor elements come in and pushes it, and it pushes it against that bar, right? Your wires are there to hold everything up. So your wires aren't doing any threshing. Your wires are just keeping everything up. This is where the action happens. So to get back to your question, where you put it in, we've got a bit of idea that material comes in and hits the bar like that. That's incorrect. So we've got a tri-stream rotor. Material comes in 3 different ways or 3 different spots. So material can come in here. So this fellow is sitting on the top left of our concave. Material can come in on the top right and it can go through here and it will miss this bar completely. So that's why you need to spread it out through the whole concave. Effectively what you're doing, because you've got another bar here to hit against, if you fill your front concave up full of these ones, what you're effectively doing is you are doubling the size of the front concave. Righto? So your number 1 concave acts as number 1 and 2, because you've got twice as many supports where you hit it against. Again, it's $275 a bar, so you need to be thinking about it whether you want to do it. I think it's about 22 that you can put into the front concave.
Cassie, a lot of guys, particularly African and Jordan now, put a small seeds threshing element in there. Yep. I don't know if you've seen the wheat ones. Most of the machines are corn machines or
Yep.
larger grains, but Africa particularly in Jordan now is selling a lot of these small seed elements.
Yep.
And that's actually giving you a lot more thresh without having probably to do that.
That's correct. Yep.
Yep.
So I haven't done it.
Yep.
Brett told me about it. And
It's
Brett,
a huge difference, massive difference.
we're going tomorrow to a machine that he's done it on.
Yep.
I will take a whole heap of photos and I'll take it back home and I will definitely do some
It's
work
a
on that
game
this
changer.
year. Yep.
It's a game
Is
changer.
that adding extra elements? Or
No,
just
just
a-
replacing the elements with it's got smaller rust bars in it,
Yeah.
whereas others are either a smooth or a very coarse bar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can
massive
put-
difference.
You can put more in as well.
You
Yeah,
can
yeah,
make,
yeah.
You can make it a dense pack as well.
Only on class 8 and 9. On the class 7s you won't be able to do that.
Well, we've done our sevens.
no, the dense pack.
Oh, right,
Dense
yeah,
pack,
yeah, yeah. Gotcha.
So the dense pack, you've got 15 RAS bars on these machines. Come out standard out of the factory on 15. On the class 8s and 9s, there's room to put another 9 in, so you can change it from 15 to 24. So we've done that on the Lucen to try to knock it harder. We've definitely put the 24 in there. I've asked a large customer of ours, to go and test it on grain, so I can know what it's doing on grain. He came back without measuring, just saying, no, I think I'm losing more. So that's the data that I've got, so it's basically nothing. So with these other elements, I want to go back and either put 15 in, go and harvest with it, put 24 in and go and harvest with it and see what the results are. So just back to the elements, the corn cob elements. So say for instance that's your element sitting on the rotor. The corn one has got a lip on it at the back, like that. So what Brett is doing is cutting that lip off with a grinder. And then the ones that you buy is just a nice smooth one. Now, as soon as he started telling me about that story, on the 50 series machines, the rotor elements looked like that. It didn't have the corn cob lip on the back. And I've gone out, drop a tray behind 50 series machines, and you struggle to find grain behind the 50 series machine if they are doing the right speed. Right? So that made me think, right, maybe Brett is onto the money with the element without the lip on. So yep, we will go and do that when we get home. I see there's a lot of Condex concaves running around here. And in New South Wales where we were about a month ago, I can't make any comments on the concave, on the Condex concave. That's something that we'll be testing this year as well. So
Okay.
hopefully we'll get more data on that.
Kassie, can we, what concaves are guys using? Anyone got using standard or using condex? Or?
Condex. We've got a condex in the
Condex?
front one.
Yeah.
The theory on the condex, just what I can see, is we do have the bars sitting on a 45-degree angle. We do have small holes in there, and that's what I'm preaching. So just looking at the photo, I think it will work. So we'll go and do some tests on that and see whether it works.
I think with our 670 and 770, we've put condex in the front and the small elements. We've got between 20 and 25% more capacity, just with a lot more thrash.
Yeah. And
It's-
your
it's
losses?
Huge difference.
Your losses?
It's a lot better. We've probably gained a couple of Ks.
Yeah.
In a 3-ton crop, you gain a couple of Ks.
You're measuring your losses?
We haven't been, but that's the next step.
Yeah.
What's everyone else running for concaves? Has anyone got the 31s all the way through? Nah. What do you got? What do you got, Brad?
No, I got 20. Oh, I can never quite remember. But
25, 31, 31, I think,
So
used to
again,
be pretty
what's that?
standard.
What's that?
25, 31, 31.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That.
So you get a 31, which is really close, and then you get a 25, and you know if you don't go and count the bars, you won't know roughly the difference between the two. And then you get a 15 or 16, which is the big large one where you can stick your finger through. Obviously,
After are really, I don't know. They seem to do everything pretty standard across the
Yeah.
board, and they like to do that so that then they can, if you've got problems, then they can.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty fair to say that everything that's sold by Africa is all.
Yeah.
Unless you really push them, they don't
Yeah.
tend
That
to
was like
change them out of those orders.
if you go to the spare parts manual, it will say you a Aussie concave or standard Aussie concave. So that was 31, 25, 25. And that is something that came from, you know, blokes the same as me 20 years ago that ran around with the concaves and did some tests and see which one performed the best. And they came back saying, yep, 31, 25, 25 works. And that got spread out through the dealerships and say, right, this is what works. And then go with it. If you want to order a machine, you can order it that way. But I've seen enough places to know that the corner of this paddock, you go to the other end of this paddock, there'll be differences. So regions, districts, farms, everything is different. So whatever works for you, works for you.
But yeah, I reckon you just nailed it then. You're not going to swap your concave from one end of the paddock to the other.
No.
And that's why I say, you know, all these guys, cases and stuff that swap their concaves all the back. I said, fuck that.
No.
I was too hot and too many flies, too much I set the fucking thing up and go.
But that's why we've stuck with John Deere. You can harvest wheat through the day, and you might get a call change that night, and you can swap over to lupins without touching any of them.
Yeah.
And it's just basically hit your screen there, put your lupins in there, and away you go.
I've had a customer who had small wires in 1, 2 and 3. We buried the old fellow a couple of weeks ago, but when he was 70, he said, I'm not changing concaves, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And he would go out and harvest fibre beans with it. He'll drive slow, and he relies on his separator area to get the beans through. Open it wide up, and you'll just go and harvest. So everything is possible. Back at other schools, I had a whiteboard. Peter forgot my whiteboard to bring it. I would put on the whiteboard, I will put 6, 6, 42. And then I'll put 7, 0, 42. And I'll put 40, or 1, what is it, 136, 42. And I'll say to the people, what the hell is that? And they'll look at it and look at it and look at it and I don't know. It's a footy score. So you get 6 goals, you know, whatever, you get to the 42 at the end. The 42 at the end is the grain that you get in your box. It doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you get there. You've won the flag, everything is nice, everything, you've got it. It doesn't matter how you get there. So some people, like the old fella, can have 31 wires in here at the front. He goes and harvests beans. He's harvesting at 2 or 3k an hour. He couldn't give a stuff where he sits in there all day. He gets all his beans in the top. You would put round bars in there. Go and harvest your beans. You'll do 10k an hour. You'll harvest for 4 hours for the day. And you get all your beans in. So there's different ways that we can set the machines up to go and work. Back to you, what you were saying about changing everything, well, changing from one side to the other side. If you take your operator's manual, you will see they will tell you what concaves to put in. They will tell you what speed your rotor needs to go, your feed accelerator needs to go, what the settings on your sieves are. What's the only thing that they don't tell you what to do?
Ground speed.
Who said that? Yep. Why is that?
Varies on crop, doesn't it?
They don't know how thick your crop is. They don't know whether you've got a hilly country, whether it's nice and flat. They don't know that.
Conditions, temperature.
Conditions. So they will give you all the settings in the world, but they don't tell you your ground speed. I'll keep on saying this is a little factory. So when we do our drop trays, if you're driving, you know that you're going to drive at 12 k an hour all day. So when you do your drop tray, do it at 12 k an hour and see what happens. It's no use you're thinking, shit, I might go nice and slow and go 6 k an hour and do a drop tray. No, I've got nothing in there and jump back in and go and harvest at 12 k an hour. You might as well not do the drop tray. So do the drop tray at the speed that you're going to be harvesting at. You're going to harvest 40 tonne an hour with this, so 40 tonne an hour into the box. So there's 40 tonne of grain going in. So let's call it round numbers. So you've got 40 tonnes of straw and material that goes into the front with the grain. So you get 80 tonne an hour of material that needs to go into this little factory. Right? So if you stick your stick forward 50%, you go from 8 k an hour to 12 k an hour, your 80 tonne an hour goes up to 120 tonne an hour that needs to go through here. So all of a sudden, 80 tonne, 120 tonne, and you don't make any adjustments in here, you don't do any adjustments on your sieve, you don't do any adjustments on your wind, you're going to get a different result. Right? So set your machine up at the speed that you're going to be harvesting at. We get a lot of questions about how many times do we need to do a drop tray. You're not going to go out and do a drop tray at 2 in the morning, because harvesting at 2 in the morning is just going to be a very short period of time that you're going to do that. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, chances are pretty bloody good that you're going to be harvesting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon every single day of the week. So pick the time of day where you're going to be doing the majority of your work in and go and do your drop tray. Right? If we go back to our concaves, one thing we talked about the convex concaves. I've done a lot of work with a helical concave. So it's a concave where these bars are sitting like that in the concave. So when you look at the machine, instead of sitting like that, they are sitting like that. So as our material comes in, it hits it on a 90-degree angle. Right? So those bars, those concaves are really, really heavy to swap out. You don't want to work with that 5 times a day, but you get really good results in that, in the helical concave. I was fortunate enough to be on a farm one day where we had a 31 wire concave in the front. I had a 31 wire concave in the back of my ute fully loaded with these ones, and also a helical concave. That was the red eggs or red wheat. We couldn't get a nice sample with a 31 wire. We took that out, we put the helical concave in there. It took our white eggs away like that, like split it in half like that. So we took the helical concave out, we put these fellas, or the concave with this interrupter bars in there, and it fixed our sample. Righto? So double the surface area really works for us. If we look at this area here, and that's what I've seen with, apprentices and even qualified mechanics and some customers, if they look at that, they see that's my rotor area. That's all that it is, that's a rotor area. We need to change that mindset of ours from the left to the front, or from the left of this pillar to the front. That is our threshing area. And then from the pillar to the back, that's our separation area. So everything from here to the front, in my opinion, we want to keep it as close as, or the concaves, as close as possible, not close to the rotor, but 31 wire concaves, not the open ones. And we need to knock it as hard as what we can in that threshing area. If you go to your dealership and you ask them what John Deere suggests about concaves, and they want to give you that information, they'll tell you John Deere came out over the last 3 years saying 31 wire concave for everything, apart from beans and lupins and those type of things. But for cereals, canola, 31 wire concaves, all three of them. Right? So front area, hit it as hard as possible. Now we come to the back. This is a separate area. We can't see that as the same as our concave area. So we get our separation area. So in the older machines, not these ones, but in the old 680s and the previous 60 series and 70s, we could split the grain loss monitor on the top sieve. So the grain loss monitor in the cab will show you left and will show you right. So as you're harvesting, you can see, all right, I've got losses on the left-hand side of the sieve, I've got losses on the right-hand side of the sieve. Most of 90% of these machines has got a combination of the two, so you can't split it between left and right. So I was sitting in a machine and realised the left-hand side is way up there, so we can see we get a lot of losses. And the right-hand side of the sieves, there's no losses on the right-hand side. So what I thought was the left-hand side is working all right, the right-hand side is not working all right. So standing at the back here, the rotor is spinning clockwise. So this is the last part, like material will come in, it will push it up into our separator area here, like clockwise. So the next day I went out to a machine, we had to swap the top and bottom sieve out on it. We pulled the top sieve out, and there was a new machine that had about 80 hours on it. Pulled the top sieve out of it, and the black paint from the top sieve was worn away on the right hand side. We pulled the bottom sieve out and the black paint was worn away on the right hand side. Left hand side was still nice and black. So that's when the penny dropped, and I thought the right hand side on these machines are doing the right thing. It's the left hand side that's letting us down. Right? So number one, what I've done, I've cut fingers off on the right hand side, like these fingers here. Cut them off, but after I saw the sieves, I realized we need to open up the left hand side more. We want more material onto the left hand side of our machine. So there's two options of doing that. So either more material or letting the wind, like slowing the wind down on the left hand side of the machine. So what we've done, I looked at the fan and I thought, no shit, that looks too hard to make a modification there. So the first modification that we've done, I've marked it here this morning. Those little spaces, I've marked it white. If you want to have a look at it later on. I took those spaces out and I put that spacer between the framework of the header there and the separator grate. And I pulled that separator grates away from the rotor. Done a drop tray before we've done that. Do a drop tray afterwards, and we could see an improvement in our grain loss. That got less. So I thought, well, if the spaces made a difference, let's open it up more. So what I've done is I've marked it white. I've cut every second finger off of the separator grate, and I've opened it up more. So the first test that we've done is we've cut the left hand, like there's obviously 4 separator grates here that goes all the way from the left hand to the right hand side. So 4 of them, and there's also 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of them. So the ones that you can see here, the first one that you can see here, number 1, 2, 3 and 4, I've cut every second finger out of them. Put them back in, go and harvest, done a drop tray. It was, fairly heavy wheat crop, about 10 ton wheat crop, and our grains that we got in the tray with the normal grates on it was 12.5 grams. So we put the ones in that I've cut off, go and do a drop tray, and it was 2 grams. We haven't changed anything. Ground speed was the same, paddock was the same, circumstances was the same, and our grain loss monitors were set up. We haven't changed anything in the grain loss monitors. As soon as we put these ones back in, grain loss monitors through the roof. We put the modified ones in, grain loss monitors fry down. So that proved to me that, yep, we need to open it up. We need to get the material out of it. And then I thought, alright, if it works for one row, it will work for the second row. It didn't work for the second row. So don't stress, if you want to go and do this modification, just this 4 that you can see here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't worry about the rest of the machine, because like I said, the right hand side of the machine is working fine. It's working the way that it should be.
It's about 1/4 of the whole separation area in total.
Yeah, 1/4. Yep.
What's the best place for those blanking plates, Cassie?
Which one's got boats? Which blokes go fishing a lot? No one.
Just harvest.
Just harvesting. Those blanking plates, piss them off in the corner of the shed. Don't use them. Right?
Anybody using them?
Obviously.
We get a wish after you here because you're absolutely upside down on this.
I reckon everything else too, but
And I've operated them a lot, and I just always under the impression, and mostly I'd argue with you that we just override our left-hand side of our sieve all the time.
Yep.
We just cannot. And we never have a drum chucking grain, really have anything coming out the rotor. Just overload our left-hand side of our sieve.
Yeah, but I reckon because I'm not sure what conditions where, you know, what you're talking about, but I find that, well, with Lexion, we get a lot, like in the heat of the day there in the Lexion, you can shut the rotors, like the things, and that just makes the fucking hugest difference in the heat of the day to loading your sieves.
Yep.
You can get all that shit out the back instead of fucking loading up the sieves. I would think it would be the same in these. Like on the heat of the day, all of a sudden you're losing it over the sieves,
Yep.
and it's clean as a whistle out the back of the rotor. But then when you get damp at night, it's going to reverse again.
Yeah.
That would be the best thing if they could some sort of set up in there where you could open them, shut them. You know,
Yeah.
like.
No, I agree. Everyone said to me, well, you're going to overload your sieves by opening it up here. But if you go to your John Deere parts manual, you can actually buy a tough crop separation grate. So you can buy 16 grates to put in there. It's a fair bit of money. It's like probably in today's terms, you'll probably look about 20 grand to replace it. So for me, the cheaper option was just to cut it out to make it bigger. So I've sat down again, went back to my mate with a yellow machine. So if you turn around, mate, and have a look at that separation area at the back there, how big's those holes in there? Not fucking big. So I've learned the lesson from that, thinking if it works for them, it will work for us. So I've opened it up. In the parts manual, the ones that you can get with a tough crop, the fingers are about that long. We had a header yesterday with a tough crop separation kit in it. So the fingers are about that long.
Are they the heavy duty ones that
That's
bolt
it.
in each row?
Bolt in each row, yeah. So what does that do? It gives us more separation area, it opens it up more. So that's the same effect as what you get as cutting every second one out of here. If you go through the operator's manual, that's got the plates in it. If you go through the operator's manual, they tell you to do a stall stop and see whether the sieves are loaded equally from left to right. And if it is loaded up on the left, you need to put plates in here on the left. If it's loaded up on the right, you need to put plates on the right to get your sieve loaded evenly. So
just to go back to this, because I was just thinking about it. We've got shaft decks, right? So and we've got bushel plus
yeah,
drop trays for the get twice as much grain coming over our sieves on the left hand side all the time.
coming over your left.
All the time. From both down together,
Yeah.
twice as much grain out the left hand side.
Have you levelled your concaves?
No. Have we? But, well, I suppose so. Both machines got 2 headers,
Yeah.
so don't know. They'll always.
What I've seen on the concaves, you'll have grain loss. I'm not going to say left or right, but your concaves, you've got grain loss. We've tried everything else, couldn't figure it out, and we'll go back and we'll level our concaves, because the concave needs to sit level to our rotor. If it is not level, if your concave sits like that, you don't know where your setting is sitting at. So you might be 15 at the front.
That's beyond me. That's someone else's job, and surely they're doing that in service and stuff, aren't they?
Mate, I've seen a lot of times where they don't do that.
Yeah, each year every year on pre-seasons the concaves are levelled each year because you pull a concave to inspect all your threshing elements and your concaves are levelled each year.
We've sorted a lot of loss issues just by that. So we might have a look a bit deeper into yours, but that's what we found.
Kassie, Brad's saying that he's getting more grain loss on his left chaff deck, right? And everyone's agreeing, right?
Yep.
But you were saying that with your one, when you found that all the grain was on the right side, all the grain was there, but it was actually working properly with the wind, and there was all the grain going through the right side and bugger all losses on the right side as well. And on the left side, you were saying that there was less grain and more losses. Is that right? Yeah. So that's I think that's the thing. I think you assumed when you saw that you saw losses on the left, therefore all the grain was on the left, but you found that it wasn't actually the case.
So you've got more grain on the left.
They're losing more on the left.
That's exactly what we found.
That's what he found.
That's exactly what we found. So if you look at the back side of the header, so we can say that the two chutes on the right hand side is loaded, and that's right. That's the way that we want it. The wind lifts everything up and all the grain can fall through our top sieve. On the left hand side, there's not enough material there, so the wind just blows it away.
So we're asked about looking at it.
You see, so the sieves are acting like a hovercraft.
The way they ask about looking at things,
I'll take the first two sets out.
they ask about way at looking things. Harvesters are like that. He will jump in a header, he'll go and harvest 5k an hour, 6k an hour, you'll see your losses go up. 7k an hour, your losses go up. 8k an hour, it will go up. And all of a sudden it will fall down because your machine is in that sweet spot where everything is nicely working. Same with your fan. You get losses over the top, losses. You put your fan up, put your fan up. The first thing that we think is put your fan down because you're getting losses. So you keep on boosting your fan up to a spot where everything is nice and lifting up in the air, like hovering up in the air, and your losses will fall down. The same as your rotor speed, we get grain loss on our rotor. First thing that we do, your head tells you slow your rotor down. The first thing that you need to do is you speed your rotor up because it's centrifugal forces that pushes the grain out to the sides. So I know in the John Deere operator's manual it tells you to do the stall stop and then put these plates in onto your sieve, but you need to make a decision whether you want a evenly loaded sieve at a stall stop or whether you want more grain in the bin. So that's why those plates, those cover plates, I'm not a fan of them, I just throw them out.
But regardless of which side the grain is going, like say these guys, the grain is actually landing more on the left.
Yeah.
It just would make sense to open the right rather than block the left, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You know, like, and you
Like
measured
sometimes
the
we'll
area.
see there's 3 rows of plate here on the left. Doesn't matter which side it is, but let's say there's 3 rows of plates on the left. There's 1 row of plates on the right. So why can't you take 1 row of plates away from the right and take 1 row of plates away from the left and have 2 rows of plates on the left and nothing on the right? As soon as material gets through here, that's our cutoff point. If our material doesn't go through our separated grates up to there, it's gone, it's out in the paddock, it's sheep feed. So we need to open this area up as much as what we can to make sure that we get as much grain as what we can. Otherwise it's just gone. Right, I had it look in here before, so if we go back to the testing that I've done, your extendable chaffer that's sitting at the front of the top sieve there, 90% of the time it is just fixed, it's sitting in one spot, we can't adjust it. I've taken that one out and put an adjustable one in there, and that made a very big difference on light crops and small grains. So you've got to remember what Brett said this morning about material that will go through that pre-chaffer. This one doesn't do it. It goes through the pre-chaffer, it falls onto a distribution plate which goes to our top sieve, the front of the top sieve. So what we want to do there is we want to get clean material onto the front of the top sieve. We don't want that chaff. We want the chaff to piss off. We want the clean material to fall onto our top sieve, through the top into the bottom, and then work with it back into our tank. So the sooner we can start separation, pumping the tyre up every day, the sooner we can start our separation here, get rid of the crap that we don't want, just deal with our clean grain that we want. Here, open it up, get rid of the crap that we don't want, and then our pre-chaffer works exactly on that same theory. We want to clean it off as soon as what we can, so when it gets to the top sieve will sort it in the first third of the top sieve, and that's it, going through to the bottom. Once it's going through the top sieve, we've got it in the machine. Like it's either going to go into our tank or into our repeats, one of the two. So we keep it in our machine. Once it's going over the sieve or past that point there, that's it. We only get one shot. We can't go back and pick it up. Another adjustment, like we said about the concave leveling, on our repeater system on these things, on the rethrashers, there's a level that you do there as well. So it's the same as the concaves. We need to put that plate that you adjust in and out for corn and for wheat. We need to get that to the throwing plates as close as what we can. And if your machine is 4 or 5 years old, I know you guys do a lot of big acres here, but when your machine is 4 or 5 years old, take that plate off. There's 6 RAS bars sitting inside of it, and the top 3 is getting the most amount of work out. And the top 3 not, or the bottom 3 not, so just swap the top and bottom. The repeats on these ones, on the class 7s, it will go back in our rotor. On these ones it doesn't, it just goes through that rethrasher. And if it doesn't rethrash, it will go onto our top sieve, through the top sieve, onto the bottom sieve, over the bottom sieve, back into the repeats. So if the rethrasher is not doing its job, it's just going to sit there and go in a circle all bloody day. So make sure that you knock that out as hard as possible. Well, I'm glad that you said you see grain loss on the left, so that's our theory.
Oh, well, you're right. We might be just looking at it the wrong way completely. So.
Yeah.
There's so many of these things turn out to be arse about, don't they?
Yeah.
Like, so many of them.
Taking grain from the left because you think you've got too much air.
And that's exactly what I said at the start there. I've taken grates out on the right hand side and cut it off to put it in there, and then the very next day we've realised we're not losing it on the right, we're losing it on the left.
And I think it's also what Kassie and Brett have said. If what you're doing is working, great, stick with it. But if it's not, why keep banging your head against the wall? You got to try something else. But test it.
With the drop trays, I know the Bushel App Plus has got the ability to tell you the